This is a fresh track in the sand, and we're going to spend our hot afternoon tracking leopards. This is Safari Live.
Ready. Standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live. And a very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome on our sunset safari that's happening right here and right now in the middle of the African bush, where there are lions, leopards, elephants, and all sorts of exciting things in between. My name is Jamie. This afternoon, Jean-Dre is on camera with me, and I want to extend a very special welcome to Newland and Rosemont and Providence Elementary Schools. I hope you guys are all very, very excited to be on this live game drive with us, and I'm sure you're all excited about which animals you want to see this afternoon. Because this is happening right here and right now, for all of our new viewers who perhaps have just jumped on board, for the first few sort of portion of our sunset safari, we're going to be taking the questions from these schools, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't send through your questions, and you can do that using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@WildEarth.TV, and please do, and stick with us because we will be trying to answer them afterwards. Now, for all of you, and the kids especially. So, when you walk in sand, you leave footprints, and the animals are no different. And this is one of the ways in which we try to find the animals, because the animals are wild, and they can walk where they want to, and it's up to us to try and find them, to show them to you. Now, this is a leopard track, and I know this because of the shape, because of the size. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4 toes, and then at the back of its foot, where you would put your heel down and you'd only sort of have 1 lobe, this leopard has 3. Now, the reason that it's not crispy clear, unfortunately for us, is because it rained a little bit earlier, but we know that this leopard walked along this road. The reason that we know this leopard walked along this road is he left his footprints, and also somebody saw him. And he deposited something else, but I'm not going to tell you too much more about that while I go and track further along to find this predator. Let's go and see which predator Brent has found.
One of the oldest and most scary predators in the whole of Africa, the Nile crocodile. And it's actually hunting little freshwater turtles at the moment, trying to chase them into the shallows. And that's a big enough crocodile to eat me, and I'm really big. My name's Brent, and I've got my good friend Craig on camera, and welcome to our wonderful schools. Now, remember to ask us questions. We're going to try and move. I don't want to scare the crocodile away from its hunting behavior. I can't see it now. Can you see it, Craig? This is why you've got to be very careful in all little parts. Any little bit of water in Africa could have a crocodile, because this isn't a big piece of water. I'm going to try get up high and see if we can see him from a bit of a distance. There he is. I don't want to get too close, otherwise he'll just go under the water. I think he's hunting little turtles. There he is. Look at that big scaly head. Now they can hold their breath for 2 hours. And they'll eat you, or an impala, or a turtle, or even a lion or a leopard. Now, there's been a lot of wonderful stories written about crocodiles. Some of you might even know 1 or 2 of the stories. And my favorite one that you might know was written by a man called Rudyard Kipling. I just want to see where the crocodile's going. Make sure he doesn't sneak up on me. Don't worry, he won't come at me when I'm in my car. and I can just see where his bubbles are going. But the story is how the elephant got his long trunk. Oh, there he is. You can just see his back popping. There we go. So I think he's hunting turtles. And the story is from a wonderful book of stories for children called the Just So Stories. And the crocodile that gave the elephant his long nose lived on the banks of the Limpopo River, which is not too far from here. And if I remember correctly from my childhood, the poem and the story went something like this: on the banks of the great grey green greasy Limpopo, all beset with fever trees. And that's about all I can remember. Now this is where it's getting quite interesting. So I think he's trying to push turtles up into the shallows where he's going to be able to corner them or catch them. There could even be a few catfish and he might be fishing for them, but I think he's quite hungry to be moving around at this time of the day. See how he's dipping his nose? I think he's trying to chase the turtles to the edge. I'm trying to remember, there's some other stuff about crocodiles from when I was a kid. Craig, do you remember Never Smile at a Crocodile? I'm trying to remember where I remember that from. And of course, there's that wonderful old song. What is it? See you later, alligator. In a while, crocodile. Now I guess this crocodile is about 2.5 meters, and so it's a bit bigger than me, so probably 8 or 9 feet, maybe 8 feet. Now the difference between a crocodile and an alligator, because we don't have any alligators in Africa, we only have crocodiles, is if we zoom right in on those bumps on his back, and you see those there. Now inside those little ridges is bone, and in an alligator it's cartilage, so it's not bone. So the armored shell of a crocodile is quite a lot stronger than that of an alligator. Now Emil's wondering, will a crocodile ever walk on land? Yes, they will. These little bits of water like this dry up from time to time, so they'll have to walk from different bits of water to the other. So this one only arrived in this small bit of water about 4 or 5 days ago that we know about. So he walked from a bigger body of water that's about 3 miles from here. They normally walk at night when it's a bit cooler. Oh, look, he's going into that shallow again. Maybe he's picked up that there's a turtle there. Now you can't really see from here, but all along his nose are tiny little black spots, and those are called ciliary organs. And those basically, he tried to bite, he tried to grab a turtle there. When he saw him turn his head to the side, look at those teeth. Now those little black spots all along his nose, and he's got thousands upon thousands of them, are called, as I said, ciliary organs, and they basically pick up vibrations in the water. So if anything gets within about 10 inches of a crocodile's nose, it can feel the vibrations and then bite down on that. Hello, Meadow. Meadow is wondering, is the crocodile on top of the food web? Indeedy it is. Crocodile will even eat a lion or a leopard or a hyena. But sometimes when they're smaller, they can be eaten by lions and by leopards and even by hyenas. But at this size, not many other animals would tangle with it, and they're definitely right up at the top of the food chain. So now what he's doing with his nose is he's digging in the mud, and he's trying to disturb a little turtle that might be hiding in the mud for a little snack. Oh, there we go. He's got something. He's got it. Did he get it? No, not yet. I think that little turtle got away. Lucky turtle. So if he does catch something, he'll normally throw his head back to start feeding, Now, there could also be a type of catfish that's hiding in the mud there that he could be fishing for, but I think at this time of the day, with the heat, the catfish will be in deep water, so I definitely think he's feeding and looking for turtles. We call them terrapins. Michael's wondering how long can a crocodile stay in water. Now, Michael, they can probably spend their whole life in water if they wanted to, but normally they can stay underwater for up to 2 hours, but when they get cold, they like to lie out in the sun and enjoy a good old suntan. Farron would like to, oh look, he's like to know how long is a crocodile's nose. Well, Farron, it all depends on how old the crocodile is. So if it's a very old crocodile, it can be very big, up to 18 or 20 feet. Their nose can be as long as 3 or 4 feet, but this one I would say is probably 1.5 feet. This is very interesting behavior. Now, you don't often see crocodiles hunting for small little snacks like turtles, but it's probably because nothing's come down and he's managed to catch anything big. Impala or antelope have come down. You can see there's a little bird there, and that's called a blacksmith lapwing, and that bird's probably too fast for the crocodile. Now, Aiden would... Oh, what's he got there? Aiden would like to know, what is the niche of the crocodile? Aiden, the crocodile's niche is as the most dominant aquatic predator. And that's what the niche it fills. Oh, there we go. I think he got something there. No, not yet. Nothing big enough to make him really throw back his head and swallow just yet. This is really interesting behavior, not something you see very often. This is really rare to see a crocodile like this at this time of the day, foraging around in the mud like that. And normally you just see his nose and his head sticking out of the water. Now we can actually... Now, a very interesting question from Mrs. Reynolds, who would like to know, is he the only crocodile in this lake? Mrs. Reynolds, if you assume he's the only crocodile in this lake, that's when you get bitten by the one you didn't see. So it's safe to assume that all little puddles of water in this part of Africa all hold crocodiles, and if you don't treat them with crocodiles, by generally the size of the head, or the size, the width of the head. So I would say this is a male crocodile, but not a very big one. Now they can get much bigger than this one is, but still plenty big enough to eat you. Now, I've been on this game reserve for 2 years and I've never seen a crocodile do this. So we're going to keep watching this crocodile, and if he gets moving or anything comes down to the water's edge for a drink, we'll be right back. But while we do that, Jamie's got some smelly stuff to show you.
some very smelly stuff and some stuff that I am most definitely not going to be touching. Remember how I said we were tracking leopards? Well, this has been deposited by the leopard that we're trying to track, and I know that it is a big male leopard. I know he's called Tingana because he was seen this morning, and I was going to break this open for you, but it's not working so well. There we go. There. Now, you'll notice that I am not touching this with my hands at all. And it's very important that you remember, never ever touch any predator scat. So any poo that a animal that eats meat has left behind, and that includes your cats and your dogs. So if you do see us touching poo, it'll be something like a herbivore poo. It'll be elephant, for example, or antelope or something like that. But we never ever touch predator poo because it's very dangerous. It's very, very bad for you, and you can get really sick. Predators carry all sorts of parasite, worms in their bellies, bacteria in their mouths, bacteria in their guts, so you don't want to touch any kind of predator poo. Now, he hasn't eaten much recently. We know that for two reasons. One, this morning he was hunting, and two, this isn't a very big pile of scat for a leopard of his size, so he's not very full, and that's why we're going to try and track him down, because there's a good chance that this morning, especially while it was raining a little bit earlier, that he has tried to hunt something once again. And if we have a slightly closer look at our pile of scat, you can see what's inside here. Okay, there's admittedly some dirt, but that's from me trying to smash it. But look really closely and you'll be able to see hair in his scat, and that's because he's been eating something with hair. It could be an antelope, it could have been a scrub hare, it was probably an antelope, and poof, it is really, really smelly. It is distinctly, now that I've broken it open, I've just got a full sniff of this particular smell. So there's lots of hair in here that comes from the animal that he ate. And you'll find that in all leopard and lion and cheetah scat. But there is an animal, and by the way, scat is the name that we give to poo that comes from an animal that eats meat. So scat is poo that comes from an animal that eats meat, like a lion or a leopard. We call feces something that eats both meat and plant matter, so a baboon or a human, and dung is for herbivores like elephants and antelope and things like that. So he can't fully break down the hair. There is one animal out here, his stomach acid is so strong. Let's go over to the crocodile.
Oh, he just caught quite a big turtle, and he was crunching down on it. He seems to have swallowed it quite quickly. We'll just keep an eye on him, see if he starts lifting his head and throwing his neck back, which is very typical crocodile behavior when they are swallowing, because they don't have chewing teeth. They've only got gripping teeth. So he snapped his jaw down on that poor little turtle and then probably broke the shell and then probably nearly swallowed him whole. Now, Savannah is wondering what other creatures live in the water. Well, we've got catfish, turtles, and lots of different insects. We've just come out of a very dry area, a dry part of the year, a drought. So the tilapia and other fish have all died, but they will come back slowly, and the fish eggs get transported around on the legs of the different birds. Now see, when he turns his head like that, it means he's trying to get one of those little turtles out of the mud. Now these little turtles can move quite fast. They hold their breath underwater, and that's what Jacoby's asking. Can they breathe underwater? No, they can't. They hold their breath, and they can hold their breath for over 2 hours, and they can live to 100 years old. Now, Ashton is wondering how long is a crocodile's teeth. Now, they can get their teeth grow continuously throughout their life, and the biggest of their big canine teeth can get to over 2 or 3 inches even. So very big. And I think I've seen one on a 5-meter crocodile was probably 5 inches long. So something's disturbed him and he's moved away from the shallows now. He might go back to hunting. At the moment he's just being patient. It's really interesting behavior to see. It's not something that you see very often. I've seen them do it in Zambia and Botswana, but I've never seen it happen in the Sabi Sands Game Reserve or in the Greater Kruger before. Actually, I've seen it in Kruger, but not in this particular area. On the bigger rivers at the end of the dry season, I have seen them hunting catfish and turtles like that, but it's not very common to see it all. I haven't seen it in well over 2 years. Oh, there he is. He's still just sitting there. I don't want to move the car. I might give him a fright. He might go under the water again. And I'm hoping he returns to hunting in the shallows. Oh, he's going underwater. Oh, he's back up again. Chloe's wondering what the biggest animal a crocodile can eat. They can take animals that weigh up to about 400, 500 pounds. I've even seen a crocodile kill a male lion. But they can take animals bigger than a male lion. A very big crocodile is capable of probably taking a sub-adult buffalo. Now, we've got a very special tool here. And oh no, I was hoping. Oh, the crocodile looks like he's relaxing a bit. Oh, he's under the water. Off he goes. So I might sit here for a little bit longer, see if he pops up again. But I think maybe that one little turtle snack was enough for it. Okay, let's go see what Jamie's got up to on foot.
We are going for a stroll along a road, well, not a very clear road, but a road that our male leopard was walking all along not too long ago. But unfortunately, it seems as though he has ducked up off in that direction, which unfortunately is a place where we cannot follow him, which means we have to think of something else to do with our day. Luckily for Jandre and I, that's relatively easy to do when you're on foot, isn't it, Jandre? Yeah. It's pretty easy to do on foot, because when you're on foot, you're much closer. This is going to sound really stupid, but you're much closer to the ground, which means that you notice small things that you might not have noticed before. For example, there's lots of butterflies, there's lots of grasshoppers, and at some point we're going to go searching for all sorts of little things like termites. There's a grasshopper. It's naughty trying to do a grasshopper though, because they hardly ever stay. I'm not moving, because I'm scared it's going to jump away. But when we're walking through the grass like this, when we're walking through the bush like this, there are thousands and thousands of these grasshoppers. Can you see them there, Jandre? Perfect, thank you. There are thousands of these grasshoppers, and when we're walking, it's very hard to see, and it's almost impossible to get on camera. But when we're walking like this, they're jumping up all around us. So they keep exploding next to you, they jump around, and I can't even begin to describe how many there are. So there are lots and lots fluttering about. There's also tiny little flies. They're actually not flies, they're stingless bees. And they're all flocking around us as well. I'm trying to see one now. They've all gone to Gendre. They've all flown off to Gendre. And there's these tiny, tiny little bees. And they don't sting, but what they do is they come and they settle on our faces and around our eyes because they're thirsty. We haven't had much rain. I'm hoping we're going to have some rain tonight. We haven't had much rain recently, so they're coming to our sweat on our skin and to the moisture in our eyes, and they're coming to try and suck away at that, to try and get... They're here, I promise you, but I'm trying to wait for one of them to land. Maybe if I don't move so much. No, they're all just buzzing around me. But that's what they're after. They're just fluttering around trying. So it's quite, I suppose in a way it's quite irritating, but you get used to it. Very good question from Blake, who would like to know what animal has the greatest population. Because, of course, you've seen the crocodile with Brent. You could see other mammals. You'll see other antelope. Now, the greatest population is probably some type of insect. Maybe something like a fly, maybe a grasshopper. My guess would be some kind of fly would be the thing that has the greatest population. Maybe a butterfly. What else would have a very, very large population? Certain types of beetles? Termites? Termites, I think Gendre is onto it. I think termites are probably the thing. Ants? Lots and lots and lots of ants. I'm not sure out of those things which would have more. I think probably Gendre is right. I think probably termites would be the ones that have the greatest population. There's still leopard tracks walking along here. But in terms of mammals, because I think you're also thinking about mammal species, because those are the animals that we tend to focus on. Impala are very, very numerous. We get lots and lots of impala, over 100,000 impala in this game reserve. And something like a scrub hare, for example, there are lots of those. Not as many as there are impala, but there are lots and lots of scrub hares. What else is very numerous? Those are probably the sorts of animals that I would think of as there being lots and lots and lots of them. So when you're tracking like this, it's really easy to track on a road, but much more difficult if we were to go off the road and into the grass. Now, Tumi, you want to know if we track every animal? No, not necessarily. So we tend to only really focus on tracking something like a leopard or a lion. Sometimes we try and track down things like elephant if we haven't seen elephant for a long time. But most of the time it's spending time tracking the big cats. Elephants are nice as well because it's really, really special to spend time with elephants on foot. The big cats, just because we want to find them, we want to see them, and they tend to be the hardest. But other things, antelope, warthogs, those sorts of creatures, we know that at some point we're going to see just by driving around. So we don't spend too much time tracking them. But what I was saying was it's very easy for me to track now in the sand. I can see his tracks walking all the way along there. There's probably your clearest track is over here. These are your clearest leopard tracks. There you go, you see? We're still following them up along this road. But once they go off, you can just imagine, because even if I walk along, and I've got a much bigger foot than he does, even if I walk along off here, I don't leave any tracks. So it gets a lot more difficult. You can imagine if he walks off the road and onto this grassy, sandy patch, you can imagine how much more difficult it is to try and track them through here, especially when this grass is so long. And funny you should ask that, Natalie. I really, 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 really regret walking through that particular patch of grass. It's got some very sticky seeds. Now, Natalie, it's funny that you should ask whether or not leopards go into water. Generally not. Most of the time, they don't mind getting their feet a little bit wet. Maybe just having a little bit of a drink when they go forward to a water hole. But they can swim, and they do occasionally. And Hosana, who is a young male leopard that we see relatively regularly, he's only a year old, and we've seen him, or Brent's seen him, go right up to his chest in water. Now, remember how I said I wouldn't pick up predator poo? This is something that I don't mind picking up at all. Now, this is Not fresh, but not old elephant dung. And just look at what's inside here. Lots of grass, lots of twigs, mainly grass at the moment because the grass is so fresh and green. And then, surprise, surprise, just look at that. That is a marula fruit. And that is a very sweet, very nice tasting fruit that is we only get for about a month out here, that we start to see them and that we can eat them. And I'm actually going to pluck it out to show you. Oh, there were two. Look at that. It's almost like it swallowed it whole. Now I'm not going to eat that. I don't think that needs to be said. I'm not going to put that in my mouth, but sorry, Gendre, I'm not going to eat that, but there are certain animals out here that will come and eat that. Baboons, impala, but there are special types of creatures that do go and break down poo, including the scat that we saw earlier, the predator poo. And we have a question coming through as to whether or not the decomposers will ever get sick from sort of trying to tackle predator poo. And Jai T. Lin, you want to know whether or not the decomposers will get sick. No, they won't, because they're specially adapted to that sort of breaking down of predator poo. Their digestive systems are much more geared towards it, so they don't get sick. It's the same reason why lions can eat rotting meat and not get sick, or leopards can eat rotting meat and not get sick. They are better adapted towards it. But what I was trying to show you was the fact that this elephant hasn't even bothered to properly chew this marula fruit. It's just put them in its mouth, swallowed, and they've come out basically almost intact. Now, Gendre seems to really want me to eat one. I'm not going to, Gendre. It's not going to happen. No, I'm sorry. There are some lines. That might be mine. I think I'd rather find a nice, fresh marula fruit that's dropped out of a tree and doesn't taste like elephant dung. So this elephant, I would guess sometime this morning when he wandered along here. Maybe quite early this morning. It's still wet in the middle, but the outside is completely dry, and that's because it is very, very warm this afternoon. The sun is blazing down on us, so that's why it's dried out as much as it has. So we're not going to try and search for this leopard. Leopard? Elephant. We're talking about an elephant now. We're not going to try and search for this elephant because elephants, you can imagine, you know how you have to walk fast to try and keep up with your parents? If they're walking fast, you have to try and walk really fast to keep up with them because their legs are so much longer than yours, unless you are very, very tall for your age. Very tall for your age. And imagine having legs this long. So each step that an elephant takes is like this. Ooh. So every step they take is like that, so they move very quickly. So there's no point in trying to track this elephant because he's going to have gone very far. Now, Talisa, you want to know what the first animal was that I ever tracked. And the answer to that is a rhinoceros. First animal I ever tracked was a rhino. Let me check if that's true. Yes, that is true. I think that was the first animal I ever tracked. It's hard to think back now, all those years. But yes, first animal I ever tracked was a rhino. And it was a very special moment, starting off from the beginning with a fresh rhino track. Rhinos are a bit easier to track than leopards because they're a little bit bigger. It's just like elephants. So they leave a bigger footprints, they make bigger pathways through the grass, especially first thing in the morning when there's lots of dew on the grass itself. Then they make nice clear trails through the grass, and that's quite easy to follow. It gets harder and harder. The first leopard I ever tracked on Djuma, properly tracked on Djuma, was here. Funny you should ask me that. That was the first leopard I ever tracked here on Djuma. That was over a year and a half ago now. And we've tracked since then. I mean, we've all tracked all of the different animals, and it's always a very exciting, you never get old tracking and finding a creature like that. Right, let us head over to Brent and find out what he's up to.
Yeah. Hello, so we've left the crocodile, and I'm checking in this area now for whatever I might find, and I'm really hoping to find my favorite animal. And my favorite animal is the African wild dog. They have been around, but they can move incredibly big distances. So I'm just having a quick squiz, seeing if I can find any of their footprints. Jamie's just talked about tracking, so I'm trying to track them, and I'm trying to track them from the car. So if my head leans out and I look down like that, it means I'm looking at the ground, trying to see what footprints are there. But of course there's all sorts of other wonderful animals out here that we might find, so we never know what's going to be around the next corner. Hello, Rex. Rex would like to know, what is the strongest animal in the area? Well, there's one who wins hands down, Rex, and that is the elephant. It's also the biggest mammal, land mammal in the world. Now, can you guys tell me what mammal is bigger than an elephant? Come on, a little test for you guys. Who can tell me what mammal is bigger than an elephant? Let me know. I'd like to hear who's the smarty pants in the class. So at this time of the day, while it's still quite hot, the wild dogs are probably going to be sleeping in the shade somewhere. So I'm looking for a flick of a tail, and they've got beautiful big ears. So I'm just trying to see if we see any of those signs. If they don't cross the road. Oh, there's a pretty bird. A little bit to the left. Here we go. That is a beautiful bird called a European roller. And it is a migrant, so it comes all the way from France and Spain to spend our summer with us. And when our winter comes, which is your summer, it flies all the way back to France and Spain. It doesn't like being cold, so it only lives in the summer. Now, the reason that you get a lot of birds that follow summer is because when it rains, you get lots of insects, and the summer season here is our rainy season, so lots of insects, so they fly down here to feast on all the insects. Oh, Farron, you must be one of the smarty pants. Farron, you are right. One of the mammals that are bigger than elephants are indeed whales. Now, the biggest of all the whales is the blue whale. I'd like to see one of those one day. But I've seen sperm whales and other whales that can weigh up to the same weight as 40 elephants. Incredible, isn't that? Now, it seems like Tristan's been off his car trying to find you a leopard. Let's go see if he had any luck.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome from myself, Tristan, and Dave on camera. Indeed we have. We've been looking all over the area for one of our dominant male leopards called Tingana. So we've been managing to find his tracks, and we have one of his tracks just down here, and there you can see one of his little footprints. Now that track is from during the day today. It was after the rain that we had this morning, and so he was walking along, and it's a fairly fresh track, but we followed that track all the way, and eventually it took us all the way up to the Buffelshoek boundary, and unfortunately it crossed north over the boundary. So he's gone out of our area, but it might be a worthwhile place to go and have a look a little bit later and see maybe if he crosses back into our area, and see if he maybe comes back for a drink. There is a little pan close by here, so it's very, very possible that he could come here for a drink a little bit later. But unfortunately for us, he has moved on, so we're going to carry on and see what else we can find. since we're on leopard tracks, a leopard is probably the hardest thing to track. So when you are becoming a game ranger or even a tracker, when they're testing you for your ability to track, to get your qualifications for tracking, they will put you through a whole bunch of different tracks, and you'll have two elements to it. You'll either be doing track and sign, which is basically looking at all the little tracks, and you have to be able to identify all those little tracks. But if you are, and then they give you a score on that, and then you'll have to do some following of tracks. And so basically what you have to do then is you go out with the assessor, and the assessor will say to you, okay, what tracks would you like to follow? And you have to choose a set of tracks, and then you follow them on foot until you find that animal, and they score you on how you follow those tracks. Now, when you do your first few encounters, you can do things like rhino or elephant, which are really big and quite easy, and that will give you your basic qualifications. But as you start to get up in the qualifications and start to get a little bit better, so they'll then start testing you more and more, and eventually the last track that you end up tracking is a leopard. And so it really is quite a tough one. And the reason why is because a leopard has quite small feet, and they are always on their own, and so it means that you've only got their one set of tracks to follow. It's not like lions that will be multiple together, and so lots of paw prints that you can follow, and it's not like the elephant and the rhinos with really big feet, so they are really, really tough to follow. Also, they like thick, dense terrain, so sometimes they go into thickets where the ground is covered with grass and really very, very tough. So a leopard is the hardest one of all. Luckily here where we are now it's quite sandy, so it was easy to follow the tracks. While we're on the subject of tracking and working, and we're talking about it takes a while to get all these levels, Zayas, you would like to know how long I've been working and tracking. Well, I started tracking and learning the art of tracking probably already in about 2007. So I really only got formally trained in about 2009 in tracking, but 2007 was when I really started. And then since then, as you work with guests and on game drives, you work with trackers sometimes, and so they sit up front on the front left side of the vehicle, and they're generally local guys from these areas that are really very experienced, and so they teach you quite a bit of what goes on. And so we're very, very fortunate to learn from those guys in my time. And tracking is one of those things you have to practice. It's not something that comes that easy. You've got to spend a lot of time out here, and you've got to spend a lot of time walking with people that know what they're doing so that they can show you, and then it's just to keep your eye in practice and to be able to spot things. On big open roads like we have in front of us, tracks are quite easy, but it's once you get off, then you get into the grassy areas, then it becomes a lot harder. And I was actually showing Dave one or two of the tracks, and he's nodding in agreement that it becomes quite tough once you get off the road. It starts to become a game of, is that really a track, or is that just a bit of a depression? Because you're looking for tiny little toes that are about that size, and sometimes all you get is just the toe, which is pretty incredible. Alright, so while we carry on looking around and seeing if we can find any sign of anything, we're going to go across to Jamie and see what she's found on her bushwalk.
Scary an insect. We have found this grasshopper that is built to look like a leaf, and it's also an excuse to go and stand in the shade for a little while. So this grasshopper, let me put it on the back of my hand like this, has died. And I don't know how it has died. It is definitely missing some legs, or at least the ends of its legs. It's also been eaten, I think, by ants. But it does give you a really nice idea of an insect's camouflage. Because if you look, you can actually see how just behind the way that his head and then behind his head is shaped, it's shaped to look like a brown leaf. Isn't that clever? So that if something sees him, and what do you think he might be hiding from? Perhaps a bird? Birds like to eat grasshoppers. I don't like to eat grasshoppers. Jean-Ray, do you like to eat grasshoppers?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. There are people that eat grasshoppers. I've never eaten a grasshopper, especially not these kind. I don't really feel like he looks particularly appetizing, but to a bird, he definitely looks appetizing. Now this one is a brown one, a brown grasshopper, but Janaya, you want to know if grasshoppers come in different colors. Lots and lots and lots of really beautiful different colors. You get something called an elegant grasshopper that comes in the most beautiful combination of green and yellow and red. There's some with blue on them, there's some with, now I feel like I'm singing an Andrew Lloyd Webber song. You get some with pink on them. I can't think of any other colors, black, brown. So yes, you get lots and lots of different colored grasshoppers, and it just depends on the species that they are and the way that they try and adapt. Some pretend to be a leaf. So if I went to put our guy up against a branch, he would look like a, maybe not at the moment, especially not with his legs in that position. He definitely doesn't look like a leaf. He also definitely doesn't look like that was what he was designed to do. But if I were to put him up against a log, he would hide. But then some grasshoppers have bright colors so that they can warn everything not to eat them because they are poisonous. So often when you see something in nature that's brightly colored, it is poisonous. Natalia, you want to know how big grasshoppers can get? The biggest one I've seen out here is probably, my hands are all dirty now from the pile of elephant poop that I picked up, probably about twice his length, if not more so, and about that tall. So you get some really, really big grasshoppers out here. Get some really big locusts. Sounds terrifying, doesn't it? But they're actually really, really cool. And that goes for all of the different types of insects that we see out here. I'm going to leave this grasshopper to the ants and whatever else might want to eat it. And unfortunately, for all of you, you have to go back to school and face the rest of your school day. So I hope that you have a lovely day and that we see you soon. And for the rest of you, I am going to send you off to Brent. Bye-bye, kids.
Hello everyone, of course you might know I can't help myself if there's even the whisper of a wild dog in the wind. I have to look, and that is what I am doing. So there were some tracks in this area. I can't find any tracks leaving Djuma. I've got a feeling they've gone flat in this very big block that's off to the south of me here. So fingers crossed. Now, of course, I didn't manage to look for the wild dogs this morning, because as I was heading into the area where I thought they might appear, I found Mr. Tingana strolling down the road straight towards me. Now, I haven't actually seen him in quite a while, so I'm sure quite a lot of you would have seen the video that was posted onto social media by now of Mvula and Tingana having the fight. So I wasn't sure which leopard he had a fight with up until the time I actually personally got to watch the video and verify. Oh, this is Tingana from this morning. His tracks marching down the road. Okay. So quite interesting behavior there. Mvula's definitely getting on in the years. You could see how close Tingana got before he pounced, and I think the only reason Mvula survived that attack was because Tingana didn't get a good grip on the back of his neck in that initial lunge. I think if he had got a good grip in that initial lunge, I think Mr. Mvula would have retired permanently from this earth yesterday. But it is very interesting to see that behavior, how close Tingana got to Mvula. So I think his hearing might be going a little bit as well, and that is it is very sad, but it is what it is out here in the African bush. But still, incredibly interesting behavior. Now, James is wondering, was that encounter between Mvula and Tingana by chance, or has Mvula been in his territory for a while? Mvula has been Djuma and Tingana, so he sneaks in both of their territories, and quite often he hangs around the peripheries. Now this is the first time he's been that far southeast in a long time, so it was actually quite close to Cheetah Plains where that encounter took place. So I mean, it is really fascinating. So I think he's been recently pushed by Djuma from the north, and Tingana just happened to be on territorial patrol, probably smelt him before he saw him, and then actually snuck up on him and followed that scent. But very interesting behavior. Now I would love to see Mvula, see how badly he came off from that encounter. Is that a wild dog sleeping under that bush? I hope so. Now, I just saw something move on the far side of this clearing. It could very easily have been just the way the wind caught a grass stalk, but it's still worth having a squiz. Now this is a type of area the wild dogs would like to lie up in. It's nice and open, and there are some nice thick shades, and one of their favorite trees to lie up under is of course the Pultiforum africanum, the weeping wattle, and there's some nice weeping wattles along the edge here, so I just thought I saw a flick of a tail, but I think I've got wild dogs on the brain, so it was more wishful thinking than an actual wild dog. Oh dearie dear. Well, worth a squiz at least. Now, while I continue to search for my favourite puppies, just a quick thing. So Tristan is back. And it seems like only Tristan and myself are really embracing this monthly bird challenge, and there's quite a bit of banter that goes on around the lunch table and around the camp between Tristan and myself on the birds. He was quite worried that I'd seen quite a few bird species while he was away over the weekend. So those of you who have been keeping tally for us, could you please let us know what the February tally is between Tristan and myself, and because we're not sure. All I know is I'm winning, but I have had a little bit of an unfair start on him over the last couple of days, but of course those will all go in ebbs and flows as we go on leave and so on and such forth. But let's go see what Tristan's plans are, if he plans to even see a single bird today.
Well, indeed, there's always a bit of banter between Brent and myself. It's not only bird related, we tend to go at each other quite a bit, so it's not an uncommon thing, but the birds have fueled the fire somewhat, and we've ended up in a situation where there is quite a bit of talk. And I was a bit worried that maybe Brent had gotten some good birds while I was away, but I believe he hasn't got too many that I need to worry about. So it would actually be nice to know how far behind I am, because I'm sure we can find some birds this afternoon. It would be good to catch up with Brent or to surpass him. At the end of the day, it is a bit of a marathon. We've got the whole month, so I'm not too concerned at this stage. Now, we were just having a little look again just to see if there was any more signs. We did a bit of the Buffelshoek cut line, and we've come towards Arathusa, and we actually did find more signs of Tingana. He came back towards Buffelshoek cut line, and then he's crossed into Simbambili, so he's a little bit north of us, but generally from there he does come south into Arathusa, which is into our area. So if not this afternoon, I would imagine tomorrow morning would be a good place to look for him. And what I decided is, while we're in this area, is also just to have a look if there's been any sign of shadow. Now, I know shadow has been a little bit elusive, and the last... good spot, Dave. So next to us here, we have a very large leopard tortoise. So we were talking about leopards, and it's not the leopard we wanted, but they are still very cool. And as you can see, they can be highly mobile. So these guys, even though everybody always thinks tortoises are slow, this particular one is actually very quick. So I'm just going to go back a little bit just so that we can actually see and so that will be a she. The boys don't get quite as large as that. I think maybe forward is actually going to be better. Just hold on 2 seconds. There we go. That's probably a bit better, Dave. Yeah, there we go. So she's busy moving around and probably finds got a bit of a fright with the vehicle coming behind her, and so she's making her way into a thicket where she's going to really camouflage very, very well. And you can see how that broken pattern, much like a leopard camouflages, means that she camouflages the same way. So once she gets into a shady thicket, that broken pattern just helps to break up her outline, and it becomes very difficult for us to actually pick her up. If you had to drive past here now, it would be almost impossible to spot her. You can see as Dave goes out that it's really very, very difficult to actually see anything in that bush. So that camouflage is absolutely perfect. Now, I'm quite surprised that she's moving around at this time of the day. It is very, very warm, and so generally with leopard tortoises, or any tortoise, they would try and move around in the cooler parts of the day, and particularly when it's rained, because there generally is water everywhere, and so the water that they're using as they move around, they're able to find quite easily. Now, the thing is, though, is where we are here is actually got some pans just off behind me, not too far away. So I suppose moving around in this heat, she can go and cool off in those pans. Sometimes you'll find these tortoises, much like a buffalo or a warthog, will actually go and wallow. So they go inside there and they kind of get themselves right in and they cool their whole body down, and then they'll drink while they're inside there. So really, really good find that. Nice spot, Dave.
Thanks.
Well, there we go. So the leopard calmer is good. It's not quite the leopard we were looking for, but a leopard tortoise nonetheless. Now, I believe Brent was also discussing a little bit about Mvula and Tingana and whether or not Mvula's been around for quite a bit in his territory. I actually heard last week that somebody, one of the friends that I have at Mala Mala, had a photo of him. So by the sounds of it, he was hanging around just south of Tingana's territory. So I don't know if he's been around too much. Like I say, I think that was on about Thursday that he was down on, or Friday that he was down on Mala Mala. So coming up this way before he had his little... So the area where we are now, and that little drainage that we just crossed, is an area that Shadow really, really likes to use, especially if she is denning. So the last time I saw her, she was heavily pregnant. Her stomach was hanging, and she was even licking her own teats, which is normally a sign that they're about to give birth. And she was actually on an impala carcass, and it was really interesting behavior because she got off the impala carcass and she literally just ran, and she ran straight into this area that we're in now and into these dense ravine thickets. And I have a feeling that she's possibly the day that she actually gave birth, because she never went back to that impala carcass, and it was pretty much about 70% of an adult male impala, which is a lot of meat, and she didn't go back at all, and the hyenas eventually stole it 2 days later. But it would tend to suggest that in all likelihood she actually had her cubs that day, and so it was in that little riverbed we crossed. I didn't see any signs of tracks for her, and I would imagine by now, that was about 3-4 weeks ago, I'd imagine by now she's moved them. They tend to move them quite a bit when they're young, particularly if any hyenas have come past, or leopards or lions, and there has been a bit of lion activity in this area, so maybe she's moved them on. Alright, so we're going to carry on and see if we find any other signs of leopards, and hopefully this time ones with claws and teeth. And while we do that, we're going to go back to Jamie on her bushwalk.
Well, also, I suppose we wouldn't say no to a leopard sighting, but we're no longer really focused on searching for leopards, and instead we're just kind of wandering around. I'm reacquainting myself with this particular part of the reserve because it feels like I haven't been here in forever. And already these pans are all but dried up except for this one, which I must say, it's almost warm enough that I'm tempted to get in. I'm not going to, though. There's no way on earth I am going to get into this water. And I can see that an elephant has deposited a pile of dung in there. I'm not going to pull an FW and go rolling in the water hole. That is definitely not going to happen. But it is nice to stop here and to see what various life the water has attracted. The answer was one butterfly and one... oh, it's alive. I was about to say one floating dead fly, but then it flew off. I was hoping potentially for some frogs or something like that, but I think that this particular pan is just too popular with the buffalo and the hippo and the elephants of this area to become home to frogs as well. So all of these sort of muddy wallows, there's this one and then there's another two off to the side there, all of them have been made by creatures coming along, having a little bit of a rub in a puddle, or something like that, and then moving through and it getting bigger and bigger. So it might have started with a warthog that lay down in a puddle and made it slightly bigger, and then elephants come through and they have a giant mud bath, and gradually they get larger and larger, and then they tend to hold water for a good few weeks when it rains properly. And I'm hoping it's going to actually rain properly because those clouds are building, so it would be very nice if they sent some rain in our direction. Otherwise, not much happening here. I just wanted to show you. Hopefully you can see it, but I'm not sure you'll be able to. I'm going this way. Let's just see if you can see it, or did I walk over it? I wanted to show you what it looks like. I saw them running away from us. There was a pair of kudu that came racing along here, and I could actually see. I wanted to try and show you how you can tell when a track is running rather than just walking in the way that we often look at with leopards and with lions. This is probably, I know it's not the clearest track, but it's probably the clearest example where you can actually see. This is the kudu. Let's not put one shadow straight in there, Jamie. This is the kudu track over here. So it's an almost heart-shaped track, quite sharp and pointed with a nice rounded back edge. And you can sort of see the way that the kudu's step is almost driving into the soil here. So it pushes down quite deeply, especially around the front of the track. You don't see it in such a pronounced way at the back, but in the front. And typically kudu, when they walk normally, it's just a nice, flat, even track. I don't know why I'm demonstrating with a stick. That's probably the least appropriate thing. It's a nice, flat, even track. You don't get that sudden divot into the soil itself. So this is from where the kudu ran away from us. I didn't see them, otherwise we would have tried to put them on camera, but I only saw them when it was too late, and they've gone sprinting off into the bushes. And generally the reaction of the animals to us on foot gives us a very good indication as to just how much of a dominant species we truly are. Now, of course, we get the apex predators, we also get the scavengers. Let's go and have a look at which ones Tristan has found.
So yes, we do get scavengers, and what we've got is 2 vultures. So not only are we on the scavenger list, but we are also trying to catch up to Brent. I believe I'm very, very far behind. I believe I'm only on 11, well 12 now with these white-backed vultures, and Brent is on a staggering 35. It's okay though, like I say, it is a marathon and we shall get them. He's been spending quite a bit of time on Cheetah Plains, which is a really great area for birds, and particularly to film birds, because it's so open, you can kind of track them along, and so when you're live, it's a good place to be. But back to these two. These are 2 white-backed vultures. Now, both of these are common birds in this area. We see these vultures more than any of the other vultures, and you'll find that they have found this dead tree. It's a great place for them to sit when they are busy digesting. Because today is so warm and hot, I would be very surprised if they weren't digesting something. It's perfect conditions for them to be on thermals, trying to fly and trying to see if they can find any food. So I'm sure that they've fed at some point, maybe yesterday, and they've just spent the day busy digesting. It's difficult to see from this angle because their crops are on the other side of the body, so we can't really see too much of what's going on with the crop, but I would imagine that's what's happening. Now, the reason why they're using that big kind of dead tree like that is because it's easy for them to take off. So a vulture has a very large wingspan, and so when they take off, you can imagine if there was lots of foliage and branches, it would be really, really tough for that vulture to take off. Whereas a dead tree, it can open its wings out, take off, and glide up and be able to then start catching the thermals to get out of there. So it's a perfect tree to sit in. Also from there, their point of view is going to be really, really good. So they'll end up in a situation where they're going to be able to fly or see what's going on. And if they see other vultures that are flying in the distance, they can then go and join and see what's going on. So as we move forward here, a kudu has come out of the bush. So it should cross the road now in front of us. There we go. It's a little female kudu bouncing over. We'll try go forward. I'm sure there's more of them. I doubt it'll just be that one female. Generally, the females tend to travel in small little groups together. So I'm pretty sure the rest of them must be here as well. But really, really beautiful. And I don't know if you guys saw that tail that was up and curled and white. And the reason why it was like that is it's often a way of being able to show other kudu which way they're running, and so it's a following mechanism that they have. But I don't see them in here. It's quite a dense area that we're in, so I can't see any sign of them. It's a perfect place for kudu to hide. They'll get into these thick, dense areas, and they then use their camouflage and that grey coloration to just blend in. So no, I think they've gone quite deep in. I don't see any sign of them. I'm trying to look for their little legs sticking out through the bush here, but nothing that I can see. But it does happen. Sometimes these kudu go into thickets and we can't see them. I'm glad when we come under that branch that the vultures are not there, because sometimes before they fly they defecate, and you definitely do not want to be under a vulture when it defecates. I worked in an area once where we had funny enough, a lion that had killed a giraffe, and he was one of the old Nkahuma males, and he had killed this giraffe, and all these vultures were dotted around in these dead trees. And I pulled into the sighting, and my tracker at the time kind of gently tapped the bonnet, and he just shook his head, and I was very confused at the time as to what he was on about. And so he eventually told me, he said, no, you can't park where we are because the vultures are directly above us and we don't want to be here. So we promptly moved, and the next vehicle came and parked exactly where we had been. And so I passed on the message to that guide. I told him, I don't think it's a good idea you sit there, the vulture is right above you. And he said to me, no, he's perfectly fine. And no sooner had the words come out of his mouth that this vulture decided to relieve himself all over this guide, and it landed on his head and came down onto his shoulder. Needless to say, it was a very unimpressed guide, but the tracker was literally laughing so much he almost fell off the vehicle. It was highly entertaining. We did laugh quite a bit, but just goes to show you, when people give you advice, sometimes it's good to listen and not just to ignore them. And he said to me afterwards, I did ask him if it was a pleasant experience, and he told me absolutely not. It was disgustingly smelly, and that it took a long time to actually get it off, because by the time he actually got somewhere where he could actually rinse himself, it had dried quite a bit. So it was all over his shirt, in his ear, on his cap. Not a very pleasant experience. So very glad they took off before we got there. So we're still just checking around. Like I say, any signs of shadow or tingana would be great. Haven't seen anything as yet. Now those vultures sitting in the tree are not indicative of any sort of carcass being there. Generally we find if just the whitebacks are together, it's normally areas that they've been roosting in overnight, and that's where they've set up for the day. If you had to find tawny eagles, bateleurs, hooded vultures there with them, then it would be a lot more interesting. Then we would know that there's potentially something quite fresh that is around, that is dead, and so warrants a little bit more sort of attention and to look around a little bit more. So with those guys, I don't think there was anything to worry about. Also, if there had been a big carcass, we would have had a lot more of them. Alright, so we're going to carry on. We're going to go back to Jamie, who I believe has got a flock of birds and is potentially getting interested in our bird challenge again.
Oh, a flock of bird. I'm not sure if I would describe it as... not that I'm not interested in the bird challenge, but anyway, we'll go into that a little bit later. This is a group of 10, maybe more, might be more, of crowned lapwings. And of course they gather out in these open areas because they really enjoy the open space like this. And we've just walked through and disturbed them. And that is a creature that... Sorry. It was this entire zebrawood branch was through my foot. It was through my shoe, and it popped out the other side. It fell out as I lifted up my foot to show you. It didn't go through into my foot, so I'm fine. But it just goes to show why we try and avoid these particular branches, because that is instant flat tire material. But what I was talking about with that flock of birds, I can move away our tire puncturing stick. Marcy, you want to know why I don't wear closed shoes? On that subject, Marcy, because I can't find my gaiters, and if I put my socks on and my shoes on without gaiters, one winds up with these very sticky seeds attached to one's socks. And I've now ruined... Oh, thanks, Wind. I've now ruined 3 separate pairs of socks because I can't find my gaiters. And the problem with my particular size is that I have to find gaiters made for children, because otherwise they don't fit my ankles. I'm not a particularly big person, and it's difficult to find that in Hoedspruit. And it's this particular grass seed that sticks onto your shoes and your socks and makes it's really, really, really difficult to get them off your socks and out of your shoes and your shoelaces. So at the moment I'm not too concerned about them sticking too much to my sandals. That's easy to sweep away and to wipe away. But my socks, on the other hand, let's put it this way. I don't know if you ever heard about our sock party that we had, but socks are not something that we are very use just willy-nilly, because we don't actually own all that many pairs of socks because they keep disappearing somehow. We all end up with single socks. So that's the long story as to why I don't wear closed shoes. I do, however, wear thick-soled shoes so that if I do encounter a branch like the one I just threw away, it doesn't go straight through the sole of my foot. So I am cautious about where I step. I've also got quite a lot of experience of walking through the bush, so I'm usually careful about where we go and what I'm about to step on. That one came as a surprise, though. You definitely don't want to go walking in flip-flops. And if you were walking, I'm actually being naughty, because if you were a guest walking, I would turn you around and march you straight back to your room and make you put closed shoes on if you were going on a bushwalk, just because the chances of risking a snake bite or something like that is just too high. So I wouldn't let any guests walk in the way I'm walking, but I'm comfortable doing it. I know where to walk, and I'm not too bothered by it. Our birds have gone. I was going to talk about them, but they have moved off. I was just going to say that sound that they were making, that wasn't a very good impression, was it? Reminds me of childhood growing up in South Africa. And I think all of us have got experience of walking through a field. There's a dwarf mongoose watching us. Its head sticking. Sorry, I know Tristan wants you to have a look at some birds of prey, but just have a look at that tip. Can you see it there, Jandre? Hello. What's up? Oh, and gone. Okay. No. On that note, let's go back to Tristan and see which birds he's got to add to the bird challenge.
Well, Jamie, I'd also get distracted if there was a dwarf mongoose watching me. Cute little things, they're very difficult to ignore. But yes, we are carrying on with our bird list, and there we have 2 African hawk eagles. And now I must say these are one of my favorite eagles. They are absolutely beautiful. And there's probably a couple reasons why they are my favorite. Not only are they pretty birds, but there's also their habits that they have and the way that they will go about things. So these 2 will pair together for life, which is not uncommon for birds of prey. That does happen quite a bit. But what they do is they actually cooperatively hunt. So I have seen a few times where one of them will swoop down, and generally they are bird hunters. So they'll go after things like guinea fowl and francolins. And so they come down and they'll kind of explode those guinea fowl and francolins up, and then the other one flies down and swoops in and grabs them, which is really, really cool. So I really enjoy the way they're hunting. Now, we know that they are African hawk eagles because if we have a look in the book here, we have 2 eagles in this area that could potentially be seen. There's the Ayers hawk eagle and the African hawk eagle. The Ayers hawk eagle is a very rare bird in this area, but the African hawk eagle, which is this one up here, and the one that we are seeing, you can see it doesn't have spots on its leg area. So that bird that we're seeing there doesn't have those spots. The legs are clean, and then up on the head area it's got kind of little faint spotted pattern or black plumage, whereas the Ayers hawk eagle, which is a little bit below here. You can see it is a solid black head that it's got. Alright, so a little bit different to what we were seeing, and then those legs are a little bit more spotty. So these guys are quite common. We do see them fairly regularly, but they are an absolutely beautiful eagle. And again, for the same reason that the vultures are resting, is the same for them. Alright, they're busy sitting there and they're looking for any signs of prey. So you'll find from there they'll be able to spot maybe some guinea fowl that are scratching around on the road through the elephant dung or francolins, and then from there they can swoop in and start to hunt. And so that's why they're up there. I'm quite surprised though, generally when we come into these areas, they often take off as soon as they see the car, whereas these guys have decided to stick around for us. Indeed, Debbie, I reckon that's a good call. You say that we should get extra points for whoever can find a class's cuckoo. And I agree, it's starting to get quite late for them now. It's going to be quite difficult to find them. They are still calling. I did hear one calling the other day. But the thing with them is they're really tough to get on camera. They tend to like thicker, denser areas. And so it's not that easy to find them. So I think, yes, extra points would be good for that. Hopefully we can find one for you. They are absolutely beautiful. That emerald green back and that white chest, very, very pretty birds. So I would love to find one for you. Hopefully we will. In the area that we're in now is not a bad place to see them with all these bush willow thickets. They like these kind of areas. So maybe we get lucky. But while we look for our class's cuckoo and for extra points, we're going to go to Brent and see what he's getting up to and whether or not he's found any birds to extend his lead.
Well, I've got some good news and some bad news. And the good news is I think I see a bird to extend out my lead. Oh, it's just landed again. Let's just go a little bit further forward. It's right at the edge of that little broken down bit of bushes there. Craig, there we go. You see him? It's, left. Left, 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 left. Zoom. Left. Zoom. Down. There we go. A little white-browed scrub robin. Standing by. Look at that, isn't that exquisite? Oh, off it flicks. He's still there, still there, still there. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Up a little bit. There we go. Now, of course, that's one of James Henry's favourite birds, the white-browed scrub robin. They've got an exquisite voice, and he's doing a very soft call. I'm going to keep quiet now. Oh, hello. Can see that very distinct white brow on them, and of course they're one of the skulking birds, so they can be quite challenging to get onto camera sometimes because they're always skulking around in little thickets like that. There we go. And like most of the robins, it's got a beautiful singing voice, so it's not using it to its full potential at the moment. Okay. Copy, thanks very much, Taxon. Try to get hold of Tristan. I think he was still following up in that area. Okay, and the bad news. The puppies went east. And unfortunately, they went east. Now, look at that. We can see the moon very clearly at the moment. Isn't that beautiful? And we're going to zoom in on it a little bit there. Oops, okay, let me switch off so it's not vibrating. Sorry, I was concentrating on something else. Isn't that exquisite? Now I think as it gets darker we're going to be able to see more and more of the moon, but while we move on, I'm going to head towards Cheetah Plains and Chitwa. Jamie's got another little ho-ho for you.
I do have another little ho-ho, actually not so little ho-ho, in the form of this gorgeous lynx spider. It is definitely, well, gorgeous. It would be less gorgeous if it didn't have these ferocious dark hairs extending from its legs. Wait, hold on, stay still. Wind is blowing. If it didn't have those terrifying dark black hairs extending from its legs. But it is a beautiful, beautiful spider. It is a really stunning limeish green, and it is a spider that is a very clever, active hunter. Not doing a very good job of keeping this still for Gendre. It's just got 2 black dots on the tip of its front legs and some very, very powerful jaws, and it will actively hunt and stalk. So unlike something like those orb-web spiders that you've been looking at with Steph over the past week, this is an active hunter. So it will actively go out and chase down and seek out its prey, and then ambush them much in the same way that a leopard does, often from below or above. So if there is something that it wants to eat, preferably perhaps these flies that are buzzing around my face, there's something that it wants to eat on, say, the top part of the leaf, it can creep up from underneath and then launch itself around and grab whatever it happens to see. So a lynx spider, and I presume the lynx part of its name, we're playing peekaboo at the moment, I presume the lynx part of its name comes from that tendency to ambush prey, like a lynx would do. I don't know why. I suppose leopard spider would have sounded very silly. Just 1 second. Am I imagining... Oh. Darn. I thought I saw a bright purple insect on this blade of grass, but I think I was imagining things, or it fell off when I tried to pick it up. It looked, to be honest, it looked a little bit like a bright purple ant. Haha, I found it again. Sorry, hold on. I think it's a... What are you? It is the coolest looking thing. But it's gonna be... Oh. It is so rapidly moving. I think I've lost it again. It's a bright purple spider. I think it's a spider. It's so tiny. Yeah, come here. Oh, come here. I'm trying to show it to you. It's not gonna work. Oh. There we go. See it again. Okay, one last try. It's now on the leaf of it's on this grey leaf, this brown dried leaf. Sorry, hold on, let me see if it comes out. It really is very cool, and I've never seen anything like it, which is why I'm trying so desperately to show you. I'm not sure if it's a spider or not. I want to try and get some screenshots so that we can identify it later. It's like a little... Oh dear, I don't know how I'm going to show you this. Oh, caterpillar! Surprise! There's a very, very camouflaged caterpillar there. I'm sorry, I have to give up on our purple, tiny purple crab spider thing. It's completely vanished, and it doesn't want to sit still long enough for me to get it on camera. But how nice was that surprise caterpillar? Just goes to show how many things you find. The longer you sit in one place and look around, the more your eyes will find. I did not expect to see that caterpillar at all. It is as camouflaged. It's almost exactly the same color green as our lynx spider. Stunning. And we had somebody saying that the lynx spider's legs look like thorns. Sorry, cursed. I was distracted by my small purple crab-like thing, crab spider thing. Laurie, you said that its legs look like the what are they called? Hairs on its legs look like thorns. I agree. It really does. And that combined with the bright green of the spider, there we go. It's out into the open once again. That combined with the bright green of the spider definitely sort of enhances that effect. Beautiful spider. Sorry, I'm still looking for my purple-green miniature spider crab thing, but it's gone, and I don't think I'll ever manage to get it on camera. So while I mourn the loss of whatever it was that we lost, let's go and have a look at an impala herd with Tristan.
Don't feel too bad, Jamie. Losing of bugs happens quite regularly. I've lost my fair share as well on the walks, so don't feel too disheartened. And yes, we've got this beautiful little herd of impala, and in amongst them, as you can see there, is a nyala. So there's two female nyalas that have joined the. So those cat's tail grasses, when they're in seed like they are now, they really just catch that late afternoon light and are absolutely beautiful. So really quite a pretty scene. Generally the impalas are actually quite nervous. They often kind of jump out and into the bushes and hide behind something, but this particular group has really been very relaxed. We've been sitting with them for about 5 minutes or so, and they haven't really wandered away too much. They're all pretty happy feeding. Why not? They've got a nice little shady area there, and they're slowly feeding their way towards the airstrip. So I'm sure they're going to be going there for the evening. And have a look at that. There's a little male, and their horns have just started to come out. So that's the first one that I've seen with little bumps. Look at that. Isn't that cute? Very cute. So now they're starting to get a little bit older. You'll find all the little males will start to present their horns, but very cute. They're still very dependent on mom though, and very dependent on the adults for safety. So you see they're still in a creche kind of system. All the little babies are where that one is moving to. You can see there's another little one coming in, and so they all gather towards the middle of the herd. But they're not the most beautiful animal. They've got these absolutely exquisite coats that always look like they've kind of been to the parlor and had a brush and a wash, and they look absolutely perfect, and in this light they glisten. Very pretty animals. Such a shame they get so overlooked because they're so common. Everybody always kind of drives past them or goes past them without too much sort of notice, but they are so pretty. If there was not many of them left, I would imagine people would really actually go out looking for them just because of how good they look. And you can see there's the big ram. So that's the big male that's in the middle of all of this, and he's going to have a lot of work to do because he's got a number of females there, and if he stays with them all the way into mating season, he's going to have a seriously tough time because he's going to end up having to round up quite a lot of females. So luckily he's a massive individual. He's got huge horns. Now I don't know if you heard, there was a little snort, so I think somebody got a little bit of a fright. I don't see anything that could potentially have chased them, but let's look. It's more just a bit of confusion amongst them. Maybe somebody made a sound and they ended up getting a fright, and that's why everybody ran. You can see typical herd mentality. They don't sit still if one runs. Everybody runs together, and now they're all on alert after that snort. Everybody's looking around trying to see what this potential danger is. You can see the nyalas are looking around as well. And there's the odd one that are just going back to feeding. So not too much of a threat. Like I say, it might have just been a bit of a breeze that picked up a scent. Like I was saying, we're not too far from the airstrip, and so it's possible that the lions were around in this area, and so maybe there's something in the wind that they've picked up. So it is potentially that they've managed to kind of pick up and smell. I'm just going to go forward a little bit just so we can see them. So Jane, that's an interesting question. You asked what antelope has the messiest track. Well, the antelopes generally actually don't have very messy tracks. The reason why is they generally have very hard edged hoofs, and so that normally cuts into the substrate and makes it quite easy to see them. I think any antelope species that runs generally will end up having quite a messy track. So you find when they're running across the road like they did just now, then you'll get lots of drag areas from the toes. But generally, because of that hard hoof, they get a very defined edge on them, and so there's not too many of them that have a very messy track. If I would to sort of say an animal that kind of gets quite messy tracks, probably the buffalo, and not because the track is messy, it's more because they actually defecate all over their tracks. And so Dave's actually found us another bird for our bird challenge. It was quite brief, but there was a red-billed oxpecker riding along with that impala, so we can tick that one off. Good spot, Dave. No helping of Brent when you're next with him, eh? And so that little oxpecker will be looking for any sort of parasites, but I'm surprised there's not more of them. Given the size of this impala herd, I would have thought we would have had quite a number of oxpeckers on here, but there seems to be very few. Obviously a clean group of ladies. Aren't those little ones still sweet? Some of them are still very, very small, and those would have been the ones that were born a little bit later, so they must have grown up a little bit, or like I say, born a little bit later than some of the others. It was quite nice with the three of them in a row like that. Alright, but we're going to leave them to it. They're going back into the thickets. They're still quite aware of their situation and still sniffing around. Some of them are a little bit nervous. I think unfortunately with one or two of them snorting, the rest have gotten a little bit nervous as well, and so we ended up in a situation where they still kind of looking for a little bit more of a thicker area and somewhere where they can hide away from predators.